We're going to ask all of you to find a seat, please. Can't block the door, so we need to find a seat if you can. There's some in the front, there's some in the middle here. Mr. Warren, can I ask you to get some help and get some chairs out of the back room there for these additional people? We want everybody to be seated before we get started, if we can. So, there's plenty over here, and there's extra seats over here. We're setting up extra seats, so y'all come in and sit down, please. All right, I still need a few more people to find a seat. I need everyone seated, please. Can we put some more chairs over here? Apparently they don't want to sit at that end of the room. I don't know. I don't care where it is. Thank you, Doug.
To the public that you're insisting on everyone taking a seat.
If that's not clear, please make it clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller and Mr. Dixon and city staff for their assistance in that. And if we have anybody else walk in, please let them know we need everyone to be seated. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order now. And personally, I'm thrilled to see everyone here tonight. We're going to stand first for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We ask you to watch over us as we do business in the city. Let it be fair and just for each and every one here. We also ask that you watch over us as we go back to our home and our safety of our homes and keep our families safe. Please watch over our troops here and abroad. They're what keep this country, this state, and this city safe. We ask this in his name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wait a minute. Thank you, Mr. Marler, for that. It has to be now, or can it be after the mayor takes over?
He said now.
Okay. We have a request from Mr. Foreman.
Before we get into the main agenda here, I want to pull item number 11 with regard to the grocery stores as a permitted use and reschedule it for the 1st of February at that time. Thank you.
Okay. Is it February 1 exactly?
February 1.
Our first meeting?
Yes.
All right, that's 11A, correct? 11A. You're not giving up your time to talk, but just 11A, right? Okay, all right.
Mayor Pro Tem, we need to also amend the agenda to walk on Resolution 1603, which
All
is
right.
the signature authority for the new interim mayor, Sam Severs. So if we could do that.
That's fine, thank you. Mr. Casella, I have had a request that we move item number 20 up so that the last person doesn't have to sit here all night. So where would you suggest we put that?
It's really up to you. I mean, wherever you want to move it. I mean,
Well, I have some things I need to do now. How about if, can we do it right after the resolutions?
that's
Okay.
fine with me.
All right, number 20, item number 20 will now be after number 7. All right, first item on our agenda tonight is a motion that I take great pleasure in making. As per our December 16th meeting, special meeting, and unanimous vote, I move that Sarah Sam Severs is appointed mayor of the city of Destin to serve until a successor is qualified.
Second. Thirds.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. We have a motion and a second. We need to call, any discussion? Seeing none, let's call for the vote, please. And that passes unanimously. Congratulations, Ms. Severs. Next item on the agenda is appreciation for our outgoing mayor, Mr. Ponder. If you'll meet me at the podium down here. And I apologize for my hoarseness, but just know it doesn't hurt. As always, the wind beneath our wings. Mayor Mel Ponder, it is an honor to be here tonight to say our final goodbyes to Mel as our mayor for the city of Destin. Let me just summarize some of the highlights that have come to fruition under his leadership. He served on the board of directors for the Florida League of Mayors. He's proved himself as a strong leader with a keen ability to listen and understand the needs of those he serves. Committed to promoting family-oriented atmosphere, constantly striving to create a family-friendly environment and a place for families to live in here in Destin. Between Stormwater, NERDA, the Catalyst Grant, and others, the city has seen a number of grants come its way. The city has awarded the Catalyst Grant for the Destin Community Center by the Florida Business Watch and the Florida League of Mayors. A fine victory for the children of our community, especially those that attend the Destin's Community Center after-school program. If you haven't seen that, you need to go see it. They're growing their own little organic garden down there, and they're raising their own vegetables for after-school snacks. What a great way to teach kids. Due to a grant from the Florida Communities Trust and the Restore Act, Destin has 2 new parks on the horizon, the Destin Heritage Park and the Leonard Destin Park. Through a partnership with the Florida DEP and the Trust for Public Lands, the city will see a parcel of land on Calhoun Avenue transformed into a complete park. That will be the Leonard Destin Park. Also, we have Food for Thought Lease. This organization will lease the airport road property from the city. The organization provides 1,200 backpacks to students each week. It currently serves 15 schools in Okaloosa and Walton County. And if you're unfamiliar with that program, these are for kids who are on free lunches. And these are backpacks for them to take home so they have food for the weekends. Normally, they wouldn't have that. The memorial storyboard that you see over here on the wall is one of Mayor Ponder's brainchilds. I'm sure he'd be willing to discuss this more with you and let you know where we're going with that. We want to thank Mel for your dedication, your commitment to this town, and the people in it. You've contributed to this city in so many ways, making our community better and more beautiful. On behalf of the City Council and staff, we thank you for caring for each and every one of us. We always appreciate your leadership and the positive approach to everything. And I have this small little token of appreciation. It has the city coins and the key to the city, which not many of us get, by the way. And it also highlights his 5 values: family, hospitality, honor, opportunity, and generations. Isn't that nice? And since you live here, I'm sure we'll be seeing more and more of you. I need the flowers. Here, just hand it. Okay. Oh, and for the wind beneath your wings, I've known Mona too long. Thank you for your service and your support of Mel and the rest of us here in the city. We certainly appreciate it. Would you like to say something?
Sure. That's all right. Hey, everybody. It's an honor to just even address you for a couple minutes. It's been a bigger honor that you've allowed me to serve for a couple years. Thanks for making room for me and Mona and our family to serve this city. One of the greatest honors that we have had is being intertwined with what I believe makes our city so amazingly well, and that's furthering the culture of family and fostering honor, recognizing our heritage and the vital part it plays in our city, not losing sight of that, which is part of the Memorial Board. Building a community that not just us, but our city and our children would want to come back to, and then create an opportunity for everyone that's here. I was just quickly reminded, last Thursday, our city staff put on an amazing League of Cities dinner here at Brotula's in the city. And we had the honor of the Lieutenant Governor of the state coming in as our speaker, which I thought was a pretty neat thing to have him come in. He's an amazing man. But one of the things, is I really get a lot of joy out of honoring somebody for who they are, not what they're not. Society does a good enough job telling us what we're not. Someone needs to tell somebody who they are. And so when he was here, I honored him with a key to the city and said, hey, we want to honor you. I'd never want to miss our day of visitation from anyone coming just to bless them and honor them. And he said, Mel, this is the first key to a city I've ever received in this state. And as I was thinking about tonight and reflecting upon the opportunity that I feel that's been granted to me, I think that we're all in this city sometimes can lose sight of the opportunity Destin brings to not just the people that live here, but literally millions of people that come through our shore and doors every single year. People get emotional highs out of coming here. They reminisce, they come here. This Destin transforms people. And a lot of times we lose sight of that. But I think our culture is transforming people from who they are to what they can become. And I was reminded of that just a small few minutes of time in his presence. We made a lasting impact on him that he said, Mel, this is going back and it's going to be framed and put on my wall. And that, I think, is a part of everyone's heart when they come here to Destin, is they're reminded, or they're taken somewhere, or they're revived into something of who they can become. And whatever little part that I've been allowed to play to serve that, to tell people that you're significant, and this city is significant, and it's meant to impact people's lives, I never want to forget that or really miss the reminder of that. You know, this city council is absolutely amazing that you have here. Our city staff, Greg, you've done such a phenomenal job to work with the city staff. Scott, Ted, I mean, the people that I feel like the Lord's really divinely allowed me to connect with has changed me. And Mona and I really hope that whatever part we've played has changed you in some capacity. And, you know, I just encourage, you know, be reminded, I know there's things that we're working through, and I've always said through tension significant things can be birthed. And just maybe for everything, maybe you see perhaps, well, you know, I heard this guy speak sometime, and there's a city council out in California, and one of the challenges laid before them was find 2 things in your heart that you could speak positive about the city. And it's amazing, once you start decreeing some things, it kind of changes the way you kind of think about it sometimes. But this is a great city, and I really am honored that you allowed me 2 years to serve. Granted, where I'm going, I do ask for your support, obviously, for where I'm going. I hope that those that have worked alongside me know what Mona and I stand for. They know my values, and I hope that you would be supportive of that in the next season of my life. But I can tell you, I'm not up there, so this is not a church and state because I'm not there, but I can tell you that I earnestly pray for each one of you almost every single day of my life. When I step outside, my morning starts by blessing this city. And I did it for almost 2 years, almost every single day. And so I just hope and pray that the remnant and the residue that comes behind for Mayor Sievers and the next mayor after that, whatever part I play, it's just been an honor. So thank you so much, City of Destin staff. Again, I appreciate the honor you've allowed me. Ray, brother, you rock. You put up with me a lot. I appreciate it. City Council, you guys, thanks for even letting me serve alongside you because you guys made me fantastic. So I bless you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor Ponder. It's truly been an honor. Next on the agenda is the inauguration of Ms. Sam Sievers as the interim mayor of the city of Destin. Ms. Sievers, if you would, and Mr. Miller would please come forward, and your husband, Rick. And then you'll get to listen to her voice, which is not as hoarse as mine, for the rest of the evening.
Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. If you'll repeat after me, please. I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the government and Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida, that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of Destin City Mayor, on which I am now about to enter. So help me God. Thank you.
Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, council members, for your support. I look forward to being with the city, even though it's only 4 meetings. I truly have a passion for the city. Anybody that ever knows that about me, they know. We've got a tremendous amount of work to do in the next 4 meetings, but I look forward to a new chapter in the city's life where I've noticed we've had some new candidates running, some younger candidates, and it's just a really good time to move this city forward, and it is my honor to serve in this capacity, so thank you very much. And Mel, I have to say one more thing. Mel Ponder, it was an honor to serve with you the first time we ever served back in 2002, and it was an honor to have you as the mayor, and I hope and pray that all your dreams come true, and I wish you the best of everything for all your future endeavors. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot of business to conduct tonight. We do have the blue cards. If anybody would like an opportunity to speak on any of the proposed items on the agenda, please fill out one of these blue cards, and we will give you the opportunity to speak. Next item on the agenda is the request for approval of the minutes of the December 16th, 2005 special city council meeting.
So motion.
Okay.
Second.
We got a second for Mr. Marlar? Okay, we've got, oh, that's okay. We got it. Okay, there is a motion on the floor to approve the minutes by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Marlar. Let's call for the vote. Ms. Ramswell and Mr. Dixon. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, next item on the agenda is public hearing, second reading of ordinance 16-04-CC, Master Capital Project and Service Assessment. Mr. Miller, would you please read that ordinance by title?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance number 16-04-CC by title is an ordinance relating to the provision of services, facilities, programs, and local improvements in the city of Destin, Florida, authorizing the imposition and collection of assessments against property within the incorporated area of the city of Destin, providing definitions, providing for the creation of special assessment areas, establishing the procedures for imposing assessments, establishing procedures for notice and adoption of assessment rolls, providing that assessments constitute a lien on assessed property upon adoption of the assessment roll, providing that the lien for an assessment collected pursuant to sections 197.3632 and 197.3635 Florida statutes upon perfection shall attach to the property on the prior January 1, the lien date for ad valorem taxes, providing that a preferred lien shall be equal in rank and dignity with the liens of all state, county, district, or municipal taxes and assessments, and superior in dignity to all other prior liens, mortgages, titles, and claims, providing procedures for collection of assessments, providing a mechanism for the imposition of assessments on government property, authorizing the issuance of obligations secured by assessments, and providing for the terms thereof, providing that the city's taxing power shall not be pledged, providing remedies deeming that pledged revenues shall be considered trust funds, providing for the refunding of obligations, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on second reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. City staff?
This is the foundation for the doing the special assessment for the regions wide, so we'd ask for your approval of this on the second reading.
Okay, let's turn it over to City Council. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, I'm a little sick tonight. I move the City Council approve the attached ordinance 16-04-CC on second reading and authorize the mayor to execute it.
Okay, Mr. Hamlin?
I'll second it.
Okay, do we have any discussion? Mr. Dixon?
Yes, I'm going to need to.
Mr. Dixon?
Okay,
I'm sorry.
That's what
On this first item, I do not think you're compelled to abstain.
that's what I thought.
On
Okay,
the
I'm sorry.
next item, I do.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Severs, I wanted to mention that this is a public hearing, so you may want to open it
Oh,
up for
okay, I'm
public
so sorry.
participation.
Forgive me, you guys, I've been a little rusty after a year and a half. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against ordinance number 16-04-CC, please come forward at this time and identify yourself for the record. Okay, seeing none. Now we'll turn it back over to City Council. We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. Trammell, and no further discussion, so let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, next item up, public opportunity to speak on council propositions. I have several cards here. First person up is for item number 6, Cheryl St. Pay. I'm so sorry. Is that it? Oh, at the end of the meeting? Yes, absolutely.
Well, I don't think she wants to speak at the end of the meeting. She wants to speak when the item's up. Is that what you're asking?
At the end of the item, after the end of the discussion.
There's 2 opportunities to speak, one now, prior to item 6, and then at the very, very end of the meeting, we just open it up to the audience for any comments. So whichever way you want to do it. Okay. All right. Next up, Miss Diana Lynn for item number 9A. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Over the past year, residents of Destin have come to this hall to report, explain, seek answers, jurisdiction, safety, building, traffic, and zones. Today, you can see by the audience that it is no longer 1 or 2 that are here to speak. Today, we are joined by thousands interested in city business. In your hands is a letter dated May 2007 from the Department of the Army. Second paragraph reads, "This is to advise you that you will be unable to obtain approval from the Corps of Engineers for your planned project. The company from which you obtained your title insurance policy apparently failed to identify the fact that the property on which you propose to build your planned project is encumbered by a perpetual channel improvement easement for the East Pass Federal Navigation Project, identified as Track 101E6, which prohibits any use by the underlying fee holder which would interfere with the operation and maintenance of this federal navigation project. In fact, a sand dike, which was constructed as an extension of the existing jetty system, is located and constructed by the federal government on the property on which you propose to construct your planned project." The date, May 29th, 2007. Attached to that is a map in the back showing you all of the area that is encumbered. I would like you to look to the bottom of that page to the CC and take note that this was sent to Ken Galander, your current city planner, in Destin 9 years ago. To this date, it is not on your flume map. It is not on your zone map. It is nowhere that I can find in the city records. Councilmember Marler asked if there were any intentions to use this land. Using city guidelines, 234 homes were proposed by owner Peter Boss, sent March 24th, 2015 to 183 Destin Point owners. Your citizens have concern for this land and to prevent yet another litigation, a solution by properly zoning it conservation again, or simply Federal Easement 101E6. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Land. Okay, next on up. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, while I so greatly am inspired by your enthusiasm, there is points in time during Destin City Council meeting where applause is allowed, and it's always at the beginning when we celebrate our city staff or city citizens or mayors that leave. But during the business portion of these meetings, I would kindly ask you all to hold your applause while we conduct the business of the city. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we have Miss Lisa Minshew for item number 18. Lisa Minshew. Oh, here she comes. Hello.
Hi, my name is Lisa Minshew. I represent BI LLC. Typically, we wait to hear what is on your agenda, and then we respond to it. It's not really a public comment. That's why we're here on Section 18, to hear the presentation and then to make our presentation because we're the property owner affected. So if your procedure is that we're supposed to talk first, then I can do that, but typically we would wait until we hear what it is that's going to be said.
Yes, ma'am, I will give you that opportunity during that time.
And I believe Mr. Destin would be the same.
Okay,
He
thank
should be
you.
the next card.
He is the next card. Mr. Destin, do you want to waive till that time? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Lockwood Wernette for item number 20.
Lockwood Wernette, 10 Country Club Drive East, Destin, Florida. I'm here on behalf of Destin water users. Item number 20 is a request for easement that has been presented to the city staff, and the city staff has brought it before you. This is an easement that would help us expand the sewer system serving the Crystal Beach area. This area where we've asked for the easement will cause the least disturbance to the existing infrastructure. We'd ask that you would consider the city staff report that asks your consideration for approval of this, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wernette. Okay, we have no other speakers, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Item number 4 and item number 5.
Move to approve the consent agenda, both items.
Ms. Trammell?
Second,
Okay.
Mayor.
And Mr. Marlar has the second. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Trammell, seconded by Mr. Marlar to approve the consent agenda. Let's call for the vote. It passes unanimously. There we go. Got it going. Okay, moving on. Next up, Resolution 16-01, Initial Assessment Resolution for the Regions Way Reconstruction. Mr. Miller, would you please read that resolution by title?
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 16-01 by title is a resolution of the City of Destin, Florida relating to acquisition, reconstruction, and funding of Regions Way, establishing the terms and conditions of proposed special assessments for the acquisition and reconstruction of Regions Way, establishing a public hearing to consider imposition of the proposed assessments and the method of their collection, directing the provision of notice, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. City staff?
Yeah, this is the item that we've been working on probably for the last year and a half now to resolve the issues with Regions Way. This would levy the special assessment against the property owners who benefit from the roadway being repaired. We've worked through the procedural issues as relates to the individuals, the entities that currently owns Region Way. We're working through for them to quit claim to us, assuming the special assessment goes through. This would give us ownership of the road, would then allow us to go in and make the repairs. This levies the assessment based on the numbers of trips generated for each use out there based on the traffic calculations. We have mitigate for some of the properties that have a driveway on the Crystal Beach Drive. They have a mitigation factor in the trips. We've worked with the tax collector and the property appraiser, so any individuals who don't pay off their special assessment within in the period of time that's acceptable, this would go on the 2016 tax bill. We're 5% interest on the city's dollars. We factored in the appropriate discounts if people prepay, and then we worked through the cost to the property appraiser and to the tax collector. So we believe this is an acceptable approach to resolving the issues, long-standing issues with Regions Way, and we'd ask for your consideration of this item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Casella. Okay, city council members, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the City Council adopt Resolution 16-01 and direct staff to coordinate published and mailed notices in accordance with the resolution in Section 197.3632 Florida statutes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Trammell?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Dixon, did you have a discussion?
Yes,
on
I'm
that?
going to need to abstain from this. I work part-time for the company Government Services Group that did the methodology and the assessment material for this, so I will need to abstain. I've never done it before, so I guess I'll have some help from Mr. Bailey.
Yeah,
So-
you'll just need to fill out that paperwork. Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other discussion from city council? Okay, seeing none, we will now call the vote. Okay, that passes 6 with 1 abstention. Mr. Dixon, thank you so much. Okay, next item up, Resolution 1602, Budget Amendment Number 1 for FY 2016. Mr. Miller, would you please read that resolution by title?
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 16-02 by title is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Destin amending the fiscal year 2016 budget and making certain amendments to designated appropriations of funds of the city, increasing the general fund budget by $77,318.42 and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. City staff?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and City Council. What this does, two things. It carried forward some purchase orders and items from the fiscal year 15, as well as makes the appropriate budget amendments that we need to accomplish that with. So we'd ask for your consideration of this item.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I move the council adopt Resolution 16-02.
Okay, Ms. Trammell?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, we've got a motion on the floor by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. Trammell to approve Resolution 16-02. Let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, now we are going to move item number 20 up to the...
Before we do that, I'm sorry, can we do Resolution 1603, since we're in the resolution phase?
Oh, sure,
Which is the
sure.
signature
I had it on
authority.
the back side. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, 1603. Mr. Miller, can you help me out with that one? That's the
Yes, ma'am.
signature.
Resolution 16-03 by title is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Destin authorizing certain financial institutions to amend signature authorization for all present and future financial accounts with the City of Destin and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, sir. Staff, you just...
Yeah, this basically replaces Mayor Ponder with Mayor Severs and allows her to sign on the appropriate signature authorities for our banking accounts.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
Yes, Mayor, question. Since this is a non-agenda item, do we need to do a supermajority vote to walk this on to be procedurally correct?
That's if anyone calls that point of order.
I'll call it.
Okay, we need to, you'll make a motion to...
I make the motion that we walk on Resolution 16-02. is that correct?
Yes, it would be to set aside the order of the day.
Right, first we need to make a motion to set aside the order of the day and walk on Resolution 16-03 to change the signature cards for the signature authority for the city of Destin.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Got Ms. Trammell. Okay, any discussion? Let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, now would you like to make a motion to approve or whatever you decide to do?
Yes, I will make the-
Resolution 16-03.
I will make the motion to approve Resolution 16-03, changing the signature cards for signature authority for the city of Destin.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Trammell has a second. Any discussion? Okay, we've got a motion on the floor to approve Resolution 16-03 by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. Trammell. Let's call for the vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, thank you for reminding me on that one. Okay, now, item number 20. This is first reading of ordinance 16-08-CN, which creates a utility easement to Destin Water Users, Inc. Mr. Miller, would you please read that ordinance by title?
Give me just a minute and let me go to the agenda. I don't see my hard copy. Oh, thank you. Ordinance 16-08-CN by title is an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, creating an easement to Destin Water Users, Inc. for a portion of city property, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on first reading.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Casella, city staff?
Yeah, this is a request from Destin Water Users for, I believe they're relocating a force main off of Highway 98 as part of the 6-laning. This encroaches into two parcels the city owns, one here at the annex, as well as one down by the public services. So we've public services worked with Destin Water User to mitigate its impact on city property, and we would request that you authorize this easement.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I move the city council approve the attached ordinance 16-08-CN on first reading and direct staff to prepare for second reading.
Okay, Ms. Trammell?
Second.
I do want to ask a question. Since Mr. Lockwood Warnett, this is impacting him, I know he spoke earlier. Do you have anything else to add, sir? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion for approval for ordinance 16-08-CN by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. Trammell. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's call for the vote. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I actually had a question. I know several folks up here are on the Destin Water Users Board. Do they need to recuse themselves from the vote?
Good question, Mr. Miller. You want to address that?
No, ma'am, this isn't something that would inure to their gain or loss.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, now we'll call for the vote. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, now we're going to go back on the agenda to project reports and comments from mayor and council. First up, Councilmember Braden. Sir?
Thank you, Mayor. The only question I have tonight is probably for the attorney. On our, the cell towers that are being removed 1st of February, what is our legal course of action that we can take if they are not moved? Can we hire a company that is qualified to move them?
I don't think you're going to have to move them. It's my understanding that they're in the process of doing that.
Yeah, I've signed a letter today giving them to February 6th, but our indication is they're anticipating hopefully by the first week in February, but no later than the second week in February. So they understand we want them out of the right of way. So I think they're going to move pretty quickly to get it done.
Yeah, I understand that, but my question was, what legal action do we have if they are not moved? Can we have them moved by a qualified company?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Braden?
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Ramswell?
Thank you, Mayor. All I have tonight is I wanted to present my bill for legal fees for representation during the credit card state attorney investigation. I wanted to ask for reimbursement for those legal fees since I was cleared. The bill totals $1,000 even, and I'll provide that to the clerk or whomever the proper authority would be.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Question.
Okay.
Yeah, two things, I guess. It's not on the agenda, so we have to put it on the agenda. Second part of it is, do we not have insurance that was involved in this? Okay. So, I move that the item pertaining to reimbursement of Councilmember Ramswell be added to the agenda for reimbursement.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Mr. Braden has a second. Okay, we have an item that is walked on. Motion made by Mr. Foreman, seconded by Mr. Braden. Any other questions? Did you have another one, Ms. Ramswell?
I have a question. Do I need to abstain from voting on this? I'm not sure if that's proper.
Mr. Miller, guidance?
I'd recommend that you would, yes.
Okay,
Counsel, it's helpful to me if, before you have these sorts of issues, if you can give me a heads up so that we can give you, in the event of need, a review of the facts and circumstances and issues. Sometimes I'll be left in the dilemma that I'll have to delay you because you didn't do that. So please, as you know, I'm very accessible to you. Be very helpful to us in moving the business of the city. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, this was an instance where I was not permitted to speak with you, right?
That was the investigation. This is
Well,
an administrative issue here.
Okay, well, I believed it pertained to the same issue, which is why I did not.
okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Foreman, seconded by Mr. Braden to reimburse Ms. Preble Ramswell her legal fees of $1,000. And I believe it was you, Mr. Braden, that made the second, sir? Did I get that right? Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay. Mr. Wood, you've got a question?
Disregard.
Okay, let's call for the vote. Okay, that passes 6 with 1 abstention, Ms. Ramswell. Okay, Ms. Ramswell, you still have the floor?
That's all I have tonight, thank you.
Okay, there is an item, Army Corps of Engineers, has that been pulled?
No, it's here. Shall I go ahead with that, or wait? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's, yeah,
Perfect.
this is the time.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to call up Mr. Whalen, Register from the Corps of Engineers. He wanted to come and speak tonight and shed some light from a position of authority, the Corps of Engineers authority, on the situation over Parcel B, Parcel C, and those adjacent areas where the easement lies. So I thought, who better to hear this from than the proverbial horse's mouth, so to speak. So pardon the cliche, but thank you so much for coming. We look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Does this microphone work? This one? Okay. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Give me a few minutes to calibrate myself to the microphone here. First, I'd like to thank you all for inviting me to come up and speak. The last city council meeting I was asked to speak at was in Freeport, and there were a total of, I think, 3 people in the audience. 2 of them were there by mistake. So it's an honor to get to come and speak to more than one person who actually wants to be here. Afraid Miss Lynn, I think, gave half of my presentation already. But I will say that anything the private sector can do in 3 minutes, the federal government can do in 30 minutes. So I will commit that to you. Quick introduction. My name is Whalen Register. I'm a civil engineer and the site manager of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Panama City Site Office. Let's see. We'll figure out how to operate this thing. Okay. Our office is responsible for maintenance dredging, hydrographic surveying, and coastal management for the Northwest Florida area. Our real bread and butter is deep draft navigation, which is rightly so because some 95% of our nation's commerce comes through our ports. I'll give you a little Corps of Engineers commercial real quick since I don't often get a chance to do outreach. But Panama City is the largest port in Northwest Florida. They specialize in commerce with South and Central America. They are shipping close to 3 million tons of commerce in and out of the port every year. Some 70% of the copper coming into the country actually comes in through Panama City, along with steel, shipping containers, including IKEA furniture of all things. They ship out pipe, paper products, forest products, undersea cable, ag products. They're actually working on a port expansion that will increase the capacity by almost double. Next is Pensacola, which is a smaller port. They do about 1 million tons of commerce per year, but what they lack in quantity, they make up for in quality. They actually ship out a lot of very high dollar things like wind turbines. They're also working on repositioning themselves to be a support hub for the offshore oil industry. And finally, Port St. Joe was closed with the demise of the mill, but they're working to get that port reestablished once the initial phase of channel restoration is complete. Sure. Okay, it's hard.
Yeah, that might help. Turn the other one off. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. It takes getting used to. Better? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. In any case, working on restoring Port St. Joe, they've got quite a few grants from the state of Florida to get that port rerunning. Once the initial phase of channel restoration is complete, they expect to do 1 million tons of wood pellets alone in the first year. Since the Port of Panama City has to turn away business due to insufficient space, I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity for rapid growth there as the channel is gradually improved. If that's our bread and butter, the real meat for my office is high-use shallow draft. For our area, that's the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway and the Escambia River. And that means tugs and barges. Tugs and barges are the most economical and environmentally friendly way to transport goods. Even an old tugboat can push a ton of freight over 700 miles using a single gallon of fuel. The new high-efficiency tugs coming out of shipyards today can actually double that. One barge is equal to about 75 trucks on the road. So that two-barge tow there actually takes 150 trucks off the road. Along the GIWW, they mainly ship coal, petrochemicals, sand, and gravel. Most of the gasoline for the region actually comes through the GIWW. And the Escambia River, of course, they bring coal up to the Chris generating plant there, as well as raw materials for the Ascend chemical plant. They make nylon polymers and resins and high-strength plastics. All right. And of course, we also do a number of what we consider low and mid-use shallow draft projects. Among those is East Pass right here. These don't tend to have the same regional impact as the higher use projects, but they're still very important for the local regions. They have a tremendous importance to the local communities they support. They support shipyards, fuel terminals, commercial fishing fleets, and most of these have very, very high recreational use as well. In fact, I think probably most of the gasoline in this area probably comes from the fuel terminal over in LaGrange Bayou in Freeport. We do a lot of support for others, including our military customers. The Air Force bases and the Naval Air Station use way too much jet fuel to truck that in, so instead that comes by barge. Again, one large fuel barge is probably equal to about 100 or 150 tanker trucks, and each of these bases goes through at least 2 barges per month. So that would be 10 tanker trucks per day, every day, just to keep up with use. The picture there is the Pensacola Naval Air Station's fuel dock, in case anyone was curious. And of course, we also maintain channels and boat basins for our Coast Guard fleets and the U.S. Navy. And finally, the last part of my Corps of Engineers commercial. We also do support for other federal agencies as well as state, county, and city government entities. We do beach renourishment work for Bay County and Panama City Beach. as well as on Eglin Air Force Base. There's a potential Walton County beach restoration project that's going through the study phase now. We help with flood protection for the levee systems in Geneva and Elba, Alabama, and we've been hired by the National Park Service to do surveys of a lot of their historic structures, and we've even been hired by the EPA to do some criminal investigative surveying, which resulted in the largest ever wetlands-related fines in history. It's over $2 million in fines to one individual. But we're here tonight to talk about East Pass. The East Pass project consists of a main entrance channel leading from the Gulf up into the bay, as well as a side branch channel going off into Old Pass Lagoon. There are two rock jetties that are connected to sand dikes that anchor the jetties to the shore. The original project was authorized in 1951 and first maintained in 1952. Of course, the original project would be the old pass. The new pass was formed sometimes later, but once was formed and stabilized, that's what we maintain today. That project was authorized by the 1965 River and Harbors Act. Construction started in October of '67 and completed in January of '69. Old Pass Lagoon was officially added to the federal project sometime later in 1981. The last maintenance event was started in November of 2014. We had quite a few delays due to some unfortunate weather, and we were faced with a situation where we would end up having to pay our contractor the last of the funds we had available to sit and stand by waiting on the weather to clear up. It didn't look like the weather was going to clear up, so we did the only thing we could, which is send them away to work on another project while I tried to negotiate with them some kind of a solution that would bring them back to finish the project for the amount of money we had left. They did agree to do that. We looked like we had a weather window, so they came back and started getting set up, and then unexpected bad weather moved in and they had to leave again. They came back a third time to finish it and did successfully complete the project then, which was in May of 2015. Contractor lost quite a bit of money on that job, so I don't think I'll be able to pull that particular rabbit out of that particular hat again. But I'm glad we were able to get the project back in some kind of usable condition here. A little bit of background history. This is a picture of the real estate and construction map from 1967. This has been updated through the mid-70s. That shows again, the original real estate and construction drawings. Here in the map, see all of Noriega Point and much of what is today considered Holiday Isle was covered by easements during the initial construction. As the construction was completed and the area stabilized, these pieces of easements were slowly released. You can see in the maps the original west jetty had a gap in it, what we call a weir system, that was intended to allow sand to pass through the jetty and continue migrating westward. That didn't work as intended, so that was later closed back off. But the jetties themselves are little skinny things out in the water, and they're connected to fatter areas, which is what we call the sand dike. The sand dike is basically just a jetty that's made out of sand, so it's really no different from the rock jetties. So zoom in a little bit on the east side here. And again, you can see the rock jetty at the very end on the east side. And there's a sort of half circle section and a wider area going up, which is where the sand dike is. This goes onto the shore and ends in sort of a T structure where it ties into the existing high ground.
Mr. Register, excuse me, there's a pointer on your
see if there we go. There's the rock jetty, which then the rock jetty was built out in the water, so it wasn't actually connected into shore. Later on, or after the rock jetty was built, I think they built the sand dike, which is again a jetty made of sand, to connect into where the existing shoreline was, along through there. You'll notice the easement for that property only goes to the water's edge there. The reason that is that everything waterward of the mean high water line belongs to the state of Florida. It's considered sovereign state submerged lands. There was no need for the Corps of Engineers to obtain any kind of easement from the state for that because state land is appropriated through what's called navigational servitude. That's a sovereign absolute power of the federal government from the Commerce Clause in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. Basically, this gives the federal government the authority to appropriate whatever lands they need to operate and maintain and construct federal waterways. And Tract 101E6, which which is this area here at the base of the sand dike. This is the only current easement that's still in effect. The other parcels around there, these pieces of easement were gradually turned loose as the project was completed and stabilized. And that 101E6 easement is there in perpetuity because that covers the structure itself, and that will remain in place for as long as the jetty is there. During and after the initial construction, sand was placed on the various surrounding parcels as well as out in the Gulf of Mexico to the east of where the sand dike was, in an effort to shore up and stabilize the sand dike to help prevent erosion there. And because of all that sand pumped up and sand that's naturally accreted, we see quite a few changes today. This graphic is a little hard to see in the light, but this shows there we go. This shows the overlay of that original sand dike we just saw, along with the little red line that indicates where the position of the original historic shoreline roughly was. So you can see that this area that was once all Gulf of Mexico and all out in the water has now grown up and changed considerably. And as such, there's a lot of dry land on what once was state bottoms. See, parcel B, parcel A, I think, which is A or C, the one that's just south of parcel B. C is north, so I think this is parcel A, south of there. But the parcel south of there, as well as the state property, are all covered up by our sand dike, which remains under federal control due to navigation servitude. For East Pass, today we have two main disposal areas for dredging. There is the Gulf Beach to the west of the pass, which is used for the majority of sand placement, as well as an area at the tip of Noriega Point, which is used for the material from north of the bridge and from Old Placid Lagoon, which is not usually considered beach-compatible material. We're also permitted to place material. Again, it's hard to recognize from the old drawings compared to today, but this is the west sand dike and again the east sand dike. We're also permitted to place material in those areas to replace any erosion from storms in the sand dikes. Even though it's permitted as a disposal area, that's just to give us the authority to place sand there. The primary purpose, for that area is still to be the sand dike. We're also permitted to place sand in a scour hole at the tip of a spur jetty there, which we also did in the last dredging event, which upset quite a few local divers, I think. But I think they would have been even more upset if the jetty structure had collapsed. And finally, we can place sand along the west jetty as part of jetty maintenance there as well. This is a zoom in on our permitted disposal area on the sand dike. And as you can see, the entire area from the jetty all the way up through parcel B is permitted as a disposal area. The little squiggly boundary there is from the original permit, is based on the elevation, so it's not any kind of a hard and fast guidelines there. However, we do try to maintain some kind of a buffer between our placement area and the edge of our navigational servitude boundary, just to provide some protection to the public in the event that our containment of the dredge material fails, so we don't accidentally flood someone's house with sand and water. All right. East Pass is kind of unusual in that it's not very common for us to have any privately owned property that doesn't have a clearly recorded easement on it. But this area is unique in that what was once state uplands created by the sand dike construction somehow became privately owned on one portion between Parcel B and the Gulf of Mexico. I'm sorry, and the state-owned property at the jetty. But from our perspective, that doesn't change the fact that this entire area is still the sand dike and is still a navigation structure and is thus still subject to a navigation servitude. But the question that comes up is then what can and can't be done with the property. I won't read that to everyone, but basically the Corps of Engineers has very broad real estate rights for the areas under our control. This is the language from the original easement that we consider to apply to the entire area, which basically gives us the right to dig holes, place sand, destroy anything that's there, and do really anything that's necessary on the property for the operation and maintenance of the East Pass Channel. With that said, the landowner does still have rights as well, and it does. Again, I won't read that, but to summarize, the landowner is allowed to basically do anything they want to with the property as long as it doesn't interfere with our ability to operate and maintain the waterway. What kind of typical things we see on pieces of property that are encumbered by our easements, fences, boardwalks, walking paths, that kind of thing. We typically recognize the landowner's right to restrict access to the property, and we don't take any sides in any access disputes. Fences, for instance, are allowed, but they can't restrict our, Corps of Engineers access to the property. In this case, on Parcel B, the landowner coordinated with us to place a fence over part of that easement area. He agreed to meet our access requirements, and so we had no objections to the fence from a federal navigation O&M perspective. Of course, there are other conflicting rules that may apply, but we don't take any sides in those kind of disputes either. The typical things that are not allowed, any kind of structures, docks and piers, utilities like electric water hookups for campsites, light poles. And we don't allow the destruction of any navigation structures or basically anything that hinders our ability to maintain the project or in any way cost the government money, both in terms of making it more difficult or more expensive to accomplish the work and things that would cost us money to fix. Any activities the landowner has to or is proposing that requires any kind of a wetlands permit through the DEP or through the Corps of Engineers or any kind of a joint coastal permit. The permit language typically is very explicit that whatever they put on there has to be removed within 48 hours notice. But in times of emergency, we may not be able to give that kind of a notice. So it spells out that the government has the right to come in and destroy whatever is put on that property. And it may end up costing the landowner some expense to either repair whatever we destroyed or to return the property to whatever condition is needed for the landowner's use of that property. But the government is not responsible for any of those costs. To wrap up here, for the future of East Pass, the state of Florida amended the inlet management plan for this area back in 2013. We're in the process of going through a permit modification to allow us to implement those changes. The biggest upshot there is that will allow placement of sand to both the east and west of the inlet on whatever the state determines to be the most critically eroded beach. So it gives us more flexibility in what we do with the material. The biggest challenge for the future is going to be funding. Of course, we live in the era of budget cuts, and there is no regular routine navigation budget funding for what the Corps considers to be low-use projects. Low use is defined by anything that has less than 1 million tons of commerce per year, which is quite a threshold. The Port of Pensacola, for example, is right on the edge of that. Historic funding for maintaining East Pass has come through what we call congressional ads, which are special appropriations, for that purpose, or what's commonly known as earmarked bills. And of course, in today's political climate, earmarks are not quite as popular as they once were. A little small ray of hope there is that Congress, recognizing that they had lost the ability to do a lot of things by eliminating earmarks, have granted the Corps of Engineers the authority to basically set aside funds to pay for small projects. We essentially slice 1% off the top of our entire navigation budget across the board for all of our budget projects, and that goes into what we call funding pots. And these funding pots are then used to fund projects that wouldn't otherwise qualify for federal funding due to the low usage requirements. However, there's a catch there, and the catch there is that projects actually have to compete nationwide for a share of those funding pots. There's a lot of projects out there and not enough money to go around, and so our budget gurus actually have to go argue at our division headquarters in Atlanta and at national headquarters in D.C. to explain why East Pass deserves funding more than, say, Half Moon Bay in California. So it's a competitive process, and we were able to get funds for it last year, but I really can't tell you when the next time we'll be able to get any maintenance funding is. And that's where everyone in this room comes in. As Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. To ensure the future of East Pass, we rely on our local partners, which is really everyone in this room. As a federal employee, I am not allowed to lobby or solicit lobbying by others. So instead, I'll suggest that everyone here educate your members of Congress and state legislatures on the importance of small harbors and channels like East Pass. East Pass is critical for mariner safety in storms, since this is the only inlet in between Panama City and Pensacola. So if you're stuck out in the Gulf, you may have quite a run to safe harbor if you can't come in through here. In fact, while there's no commercial shipping tonnage on East Pass, the 1 million tons per year is not necessarily a fair metric of the importance of the channel, because the channel still has an enormous economic impact to the area. In fact, I think pretty much all of the communities on Choctawhatchee Bay rely on East Pass in some way or other. Politicians often take navigation infrastructure for granted, so again, it's up to the people in this room, and this is the council and everyone here, to tell the story and to ensure that both Washington and Tallahassee understand how important East Pass is. But I thank you again for this chance to speak with you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure what the format is.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Register. Appreciate it, and appreciate all the work that you have done in the past for the city of Destin. Could not have done the last one without you, so thank you so much for that. I'm going to, first of all, give this back to Ms. Ramswell to give the direction on where you're going with this item tonight. Since I'm not really clear, I apologize, but I wasn't clear on the item.
Sure. We had a prior discussion at I can't remember which meeting it was, meeting or two ago, discussing how we had zoned it, how it was designated, if what it is currently zoned is appropriate based on the fact that there is a sand dike and easement. And our direction at that time was to look into hiring an attorney to go over it and do some further investigation and give us a better idea. I wanted to bring you in just as supplemental information. If council can take with it, we can go forward with the attorney. We can make it a counter whatever council would like to go with this, I'm fine. I just thought it was important that we get an expert in and give us that side of the story. And I learned a lot tonight from what you had to say, and I think probably everyone here did. So I want to thank you. It was incredibly illuminating. So I really appreciate it. I think one of the core takeaways that I got was the fact that sand dike actually anchors the jetties to the shore. So that to me is monumental, because we have obviously critically important jetties that are out there. Am I understanding correctly that's sort of the importance of them?
In a sense, yes, but it's actually more than that, in that the sand dike is the jetty. It's just a jetty made of sand instead of made of rocks, and it's got additional sand built up all around it, so it's less obvious that that's a jetty now compared to what it looked like back in the original construction. One thing I would like to add, though, is while I'll do my best to answer questions, I am a civil engineer. I'm not an attorney. I've been telling my boss for years that he needs to pay for me to go back to school to get my master's degree in real estate law. I had asked for one of our office of counsel gentlemen to come with me to be able to answer those questions, but he was unable to make it due to a family a medical situation. However, he instructed me to ask the council that any questions you may have of a legal matter to please just put in writing. You can send that to me. I'll get it to them and make sure that our office of counsel provides you with a legal opinion in writing.
Okay, thank you.
That's wonderful, yeah.
We've got a couple council members that want to ask questions. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a few. Since you were mentioning the importance of East Pass as a navigation channel, are you familiar with the terms SIS and emerging SIS through the Florida Department of Transportation? You may have never heard those. There are certain waterways around the state that are either what they call strategic intermodal system or emerging strategic intermodal system. And based on tonnage or passenger throughput, you make those two lists, and those two lists help you get funding. And I've been trying to get sort of get East Pass on the emerging list for a while, but it hasn't made much headway yet. Port St. Joe, Panama City, and Pensacola are all on the emerging SIS list, which means they're not big enough for SIS, but big enough for emerging SIS. So, just a word for education. I didn't know if you'd heard of those or.
No, I hadn't. I will say that does present opportunities for East Pass, in that Port St. Joe is actually, again, our metric for getting funding through our regular navigation project is at least 1 million tons of commerce per year. Port St. Joe currently stands at exactly 0 tons per year, and so they don't qualify for the regular funding. So what they've actually done is they've gotten grants from the state of Florida that they're using what we call a contributed funds process, where they can actually essentially fund the federal government's maintenance of the project. So once they get, there's a lot of preliminary work they have to do in advance, but once they get the real estate, the disposal areas all situated, they are going to fund the Corps of Engineers to come and maintain that. So the Corps of Engineers actually has the ability to accept funding from other state, county, municipal government agencies to perform maintenance work. So essentially, you could hire the Corps of Engineers as a contractor to do that for you.
I've got a couple more questions, if I may.
Okay.
Based on what I think I heard you say, if there is a piece of land in a federal waterway that has the easements that we're talking about, does any activity on those areas normally go through the Army Corps of Engineers? And is that written down someplace, or is that customary, or how does that usually work?
It's really more customary. We have general guidelines for activities that take place inside our easements and right-of-ways, but again, what it boils down to is no permanent structures, nothing that's concrete or asphalt, although we do allow shoreline stabilization, like riprap or seawalls to be constructed by the landowner there, with the idea that reduces maintenance requirements, so it's kind of in the government's interest. Otherwise, the general rule is they can't do anything that costs us additional money. If it doesn't cost the government money, then we don't usually have any objections to what the landowner does.
Okay, now the one that kind of piqued my interest early on in your presentation, you mentioned there were other easements originally in the area that were released over time.
Yes.
Talk about those for me. What kind of easements? Why were they released?
This was a little before my time, so I had to kind of piece together, what's happened by looking through 50-year-old archives. But so far as I can tell, at the time there was very little out there, and so let me back up.
If you go to map 13, might be a good map to go to.
Yeah.
Maybe the one
Go
before.
go back here.
Okay.
These are all of the parcels that were encumbered by easements. There are parcels over here on what is now the, I guess it's the Air Force's property over there. There's one parcel here, one here, one here, one back here, one down here, and this parcel here. Essentially, everything from this line over was, encumbered by easement to allow the Corps of Engineers to do anything that was necessary to maintain or to construct the channel and the jetties in the first place. Again, this is speculation, but I would guess that at the time the pass was relatively new, and they may not have been sure how much real estate they needed for everything. So I suspect they decided to err on the side of caution and give us lots and lots of real estate to make sure that we had enough to do what was done there. And again, I don't have any of the actual dredging records, but anecdotally, talking to some of the folks who retired a long time ago, they basically say that they placed sand, all over this entire area and built it all up considerably, as well as in the Gulf of Mexico, east of the jetty. This was all before the Clean Water Act, so no one needed any permits to do any of that. They just go and stick the pipe in the water and pump sand. Hopefully that.
So, I mean, you don't know any additional details of how that was released or why it was released? Did somebody request a release, or did y'all just say you have too much land and released it back to the?
No.
Private?
In the original easement language, each one of those parcels had an expiration date, where at that date, that easement would then be released. The assumption being by then the government doesn't need that to maintain it because everything should have been stabilized and completed. The only one that remains in perpetuity, again, is the easement that covers, this thing is finicky, the easement that covers just this parcel here, which is what we know as Tract 101E6, and that remains because that is the sand dike itself. And again, this is the sand dike built out into the water, where it's more obvious that that was a jetty made of sand, because at the time it was extended well out into the water.
I've got one. Can you go to map 13, please?
Okay.
Okay, using your cursor, what exactly is the easement area? Is that whole outer?
No, the easement area comes down through here and then comes across something like that. Again, we did not get any easement on anything further down from that because that was all in the water and was state bottoms. The way it normally works when state bottoms are converted into uplands by dredge placement, then that becomes state uplands. In this case, there's a middle portion of that is under private ownership, but because of how that was created, we still view that as being covered by navigation servitude.
So the outside red line on the eastern edge of that, is that the extent of the easement on the other side?
The outside red line.
Okay.
Again, our easement comes down to here and then comes back up. So this area here is not actually covered by the easement, but
I mean, that easement line appears to touch a couple of properties there, so I'm trying to figure out.
yeah, we actually sent our surveyors to investigate that. The houses are very close to the edge of the easement line. It looks like they're crossing it here because the aerial photograph was taken at an angle, and so the top of the houses appear further west than they actually are.
Okay, I'm good.
I say that there's some uncertainty about the third house on the edge here, so we're going to have to investigate that. I apologize if
okay, I'm good for now.
The resident is here, but we've got to look into that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Because I thought I understood.
Yes, and then we'll get to Mr. Dixon. Yes, and then Mr. Braden is next.
So if I understood what you just said was that there is private property seaward of your easement that's included in parcel B.
I think that may be parcel A, but yes, that there is a privately owned parcel in between parcel B, or it may be part of parcel B. I'm a little fuzzy on what parcel which is, because again, to us it's Tract 101E6. We look at different boundaries.
Right. 'Cause I think there was only B and C out there. I don't know about an A, but so
Okay.
there is private property seaward of your easement area that's not. I'm going to put words in your mouth. Technically not covered by the easement.
Right. But in this case, it's covered under our rights due to navigational servitude. And again, this is getting into territory that I'm really not qualified to explain the legal mechanics of.
That's what I was just trying to understand, because I was following you until Mr. Wood's question related to the easement. And now it appears that there is some private property that's not technically covered by the easement, but may be covered under another federal provision.
Right.
Okay.
And I had addressed that with our attorneys, and their position is that the easement is irrelevant because it's covered by a greater provision.
Okay. I'm sorry to keep you up here so long, but
That's
we've
okay.
got a couple more questions for you, sir. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, and thank you. And I think that by what you're saying is, even if it was there, you couldn't put a structure there or a roadway in to get to that piece of property, if I'm understanding what you're saying. So basically, if there is something seaward of that easement, then you couldn't put a road in to get to it either way.
The only roads we would allow would be a dirt road or a gravel road. We wouldn't allow anything that's asphalt or concrete.
Okay. And then my question, another question that I have for you is, I know you said you work out of Panama City office, is that
Yes.
correct? And I just kind of wanted to know that if somebody petitions Mobile for something, that you would be in the know on this, or you would be notified, or petitions Mobile to release this spoils easement or something like that. Would you be in the know about that
Oh,
if
yes,
that
yes.
happened? Okay.
That would come through our operations chain. And,
Okay. Do you know of any attempt right now to lift any easements out there? Okay. Good. That's my questions for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. You stated earlier in your presentation that you wasn't sure how these parcels within your easement became private property or owned by private citizens. And I think there's really only a handful of people that really know how that actually happened. Because that property's been, those parcel B and C, to my knowledge, has been bought and sold multiple times because they continue to find out they can't build on it. But anyhow, I just want to thank you so much for coming, because it was really educational, and I actually learned a few things on it. I wasn't sure how the easements had, been released throughout Noriega Point, and that was great, and thank you so much for coming.
You're very welcome. Again, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to send them to me in writing. I think Ms. Ramswell has my email address, but if you need a formal mailing address, I can get that as well.
Mr. Usher, we have one more council member that would like to ask a question.
Okay, I'll
Mr.
try to
Foreman?
make it easy,
Oh,
quick.
Two more, actually, sorry.
This is probably not of interest to you, but it is of interest to almost everybody in here and us, is the fact that some years back, when portions of B or C became private property, there were private ownership in there. And at that time, it was designated as a conservation area, which was a designation that was normally reserved for public property. But then it became private property, and so at that time,
Mr. Foreman, I've got to stop you,
Okay.
and I'm going to tell you why. There was a previous motion by this council to have an attorney look at that particular issue, and that motion was made and seconded and passed. So that item right now is basically in the city manager's hand to find an attorney to bring that information back to you guys for discussion and to vote on. So any conversations relating to that issue, that needs to be brought up at that time when that item gets brought back to the city council.
I'm sorry.
So.
That's okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think that you may be a big help to whatever attorney is hired, that you could provide information as part of that and to bring that item back, but that's where that lies
At a minimum,
here.
I would recommend that attorneys speak with our attorneys.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they
sorry,
speak
yeah.
the
Probably
same
so.
language.
Yeah, I agree.
They can talk to me, but I'm going to put my head between my
Yeah.
legs and cry at the end of that
No,
conversation.
I don't want you to do that. You have helped the city way too much for that, so.
But all of
I
my real estate
apologize,
law
but-
training has been on-the-job training, and nothing I did in engineering school prepared me for that.
Okay.
I can calculate the
Did
script.
you have any other questions about the actual, sorry. Ms. Trammell, did you have another question?
I had one. The Corps of Engineers, okay, this is your purview here. You said that they own that they can control from the mean high water line? Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
The state of Florida owns property waterward or below the mean high water line.
Okay, that's what I needed you to
And
say.
the federal-
So the
okay.
sand below the mean high water line belongs to the state of Florida?
Yes.
Okay, not the city of Destin. Thank you very much. And who controls the water then? The state? if the state owns the sand, the water above it, who has jurisdiction over that? Is that still state?
It's a simple question with a complicated answer. The answer is that the federal government does, because in our sovereign capacity, the federal government governs essentially everything. However, in an interagency agreement from many, many years ago, the federal government agreed to be bound by the state's environmental requirements and has voluntarily given the state authority to regulate that. So we have to get, under normal business, we have to get what's called water quality certifications, or permits, from the Department of Environmental Protection to do our activities. It gives us the authority to temporarily degrade water quality in the areas that we're dredging. So the state does regulate that. However, in times of national emergency, the federal government has the right to say, sorry, state, we're going to do this anyway. So yes, the state, but the federal government can trump that if they had to, but that doesn't happen.
Okay,
very often.
thank you. I just want some clarification.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Trammell. Okay, now, Mr. Marlar, sorry. I keep
wish-
telling you you're going to go.
Okay,
there.
the only thing I said, I wish you could superimpose two pictures on top of each other. And that would be the black and white map versus that map at the present time, because the way I look at it, that lake and all of that, none of that was there. If you crack it back, and like the first two rows of houses behind the lake, you go back to your black and white.
This is the closest thing to a superposition that I've got, in that it is very hard to see in this projection. I apologize, but the red line there is the approximate historic shoreline, which came through. So yes, everything south of this line was once upon a time Gulf of Mexico.
That's my only comment. I just want to make sure the map looks.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ramswell?
Sure, I just wanted to summarize, because I know we've all been saying, or at least I have, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we've just been saying, I have just been saying, it's covered by an easement. Well, that's actually a misnomer, right? Because it seems like what I'm hearing tonight is there's three issues. There's the easement up across the top, then you've got the sand dike that runs down the length, and then you've also got the navigational servitude. Is that correct?
Mostly.
Mostly, okay, help.
You can think of the easement as being a real estate document that was necessary for the initial construction to give the government right to access what was private property at the time. And again, everything waterwarded that was state bottoms because it was below the mean high water line, so we didn't need any kind of easements for that. So the easement only applies to what was historically private property. And everything beyond the easement line, and indeed the entire area, is covered by navigation servitude, which is, for us, a higher level rule or power.
Do you all designate different areas? Do you have like what we call zoning?
No.
Okay.
No,
I didn't know if you designated things certain ways. Okay. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. If anybody else has any questions, I don't want to take over, but thank you again. This has been extremely illuminating, and we really appreciate it.
This has been fun for me, and this is much better than my last audience of one, so thank you all. Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to ask you again, please, no applause during the public meetings, public portion. Thank you, sir, so much for your time. Ms. Ramswell, anything else for the good of the whole? We move on to Mr. Dixon? Okay. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, thank you. I met with a couple of citizens here just recently, and I was informed that we have a lot of trash, beer cans and stuff like that on Noriega Point, and it's basically all the way around. And I was wondering, one, if we could maybe set up a city cleanup day or something like that. I'm certainly willing to go pitch in and help try to clean it up. But two is if we could get our public services group to take a look at it and see, make sure they won't have more than we could deal with on a cleanup day. Has anybody been there lately to see it or look at it or anything?
The Oakland County TDC, with the frequency of the cleaning, they do it, and then the special cleanup day it was scheduled on an annual basis, but we can look to see, make sure that it was.
Yeah, because
cleaned.
what we're talking about is on the harbor side is basically what we're talking about. And I don't know if they actually cleaned there, but we do need to take a look at it if we could.
We'll be glad to.
Also, if you give us a little update, I know I keep harping on it, but I always will, is the boats, what boats have we removed and destroyed, and where are we on the projects, and I'm gonna harp on it every meeting, so just be aware.
Yeah, we have, to date, there is 4 boats, 3 in the harbor area and 1 in there's 5 boats, 3 in the harbor area that were identified as derelict. Boats have been removed. One was a sailboat that we just got it up on the trailer today and is taking it to the Public Services compound. Last week, we took a cabin cruiser out of the harbor that the owners gave us the title to. There had previously been another boat that had been identified derelict, and they authorized us to remove it, but then the owner removed it at their cost. So there's 3 boats out of the harbor, 2 boats in Joe's Bayou. There was a pontoon that was out there. I was told that the owner removed. They were being basically prosecuted under the derelict statutes. And then there was a boat that had sunk in Joe's Bayou that technically hadn't been determined to be derelict, but most likely would be. And the owner gave us the title to that, and we removed that. So to date, City Crews have removed 2 cabin cruisers and a sailboat, and the owners removed the other 2 out of Joe's Bayou. And so we've probably taken about half the boats that were identified as derelict over the last 2 months out of the bayou and the harbor, and there's probably another 4 or 5 boats out there that are being prosecuted and would be eligible for disposal once they work them through the court system.
Okay, one more on the boats. The boat that is very close to the city's dock in Joe's Bayou that's been sunk for a year, or maybe not a year, 6 months anyway, that was floated and pulled in closer to the city's dock. It's got barnacles growing on the side of it. Can you tell me a little bit about that one? I saw a red, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I saw a red sticker on the side of that boat, so I guess that's some kind of designation. You got to do something with it, but we're going to have to do something with it, I know.
Well, that is a derelict boat. The owner of that's being prosecuted through the court system. FWC knows that as soon as the court clears it, we'll work with the county to have it removed, or if the owner gives us title, we'll remove it. So that boat, there's another one to the other side of the boat dock there in Joe's Bayou. So those 2 remaining there, and I think 2 or 3 remaining in the harbor.
Okay, and just to say this, that during if I'm here, during the next legislative session, I would like us to try to approach our delegation about trying to get some local control over this through the state. And we've talked about this a little bit in private, but I am going to push for that if I'm here to push. And just so you know that I'll be putting that on the agenda sometime in the future. And thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Foreman, I know you pulled your 1 item, but do you have anything else?
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Marlowe?
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 quick things for David and all that. You and I already talked about the 2 potholes at the curve on Stallman. The other issue, I saw 2 almost near accidents today, excitingly fun, at Stallman and 98, because apparently the yellow stripes don't seem to do any good. That people still think that the other lane is another turn lane, and just to either paint the stripes again, or maybe we need something else that's in their face, I guess, because I mean, one guy turned off a 98 and blew his horn, and the poor guy he's just sit there for 3 minutes before he finally figured out he was in the wrong lane. So I think we still need some sort of designation there to keep from an accident happening.
Yeah, I'll go out there and look at that and see if there's a way that we can make it clearer on
well, the
intersection
part of the
work.
problem is that the yellow stripes ended, I think, too soon. They need to come back further toward the community center, and I mean, I don't know, we can put one of those little cones or something in the middle of the road. They get the idea that it's not a left-hand turn lane. It's the other road, other direction.
Right, and it's a difficult intersection.
Yes, it is.
As it is. Zerby is very close to that intersection. It complicates too many decisions at one location. So we'll go out there and take a look at it and see if there's something we can do to
All right,
clarify.
thank you. And finally, glad to see you back up here next to me for a few more weeks anyway.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one announcement. Day after tomorrow, on Thursday at 3 o'clock in this room, as the chairman of the Okaloosa-Walton Transportation Planning Organization, I have a special meeting that's coming up. It's going to last about 3 minutes. As you know, we've got the 5 pedestrian crosswalks going on Highway 98 that the city is fronting the money for. And we're going to get reimbursed from FDOT over the next 3 to 5 years. That money that's going to be used is actually federal safety money. And I have to do an amendment to one of our plans on Thursday. And if I don't get it done by this month, that reimbursement will not take place. So I had to call a special meeting to make sure the city gets reimbursed, and we're going to get reimbursed. So if you want to come to that, it'll only be about 3 to 5 minutes, and it'll be Thursday at 3 o'clock in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Trammell?
And you can clap at that one.
Absolutely.
No, I mean at that meeting.
Oh, yeah.
No. I just wanted to say welcome, Sam. And I want to follow up on Mr. Dixon's comment. There's a bill going through the Senate this week that's going to give FWC greater authority. They're now going to be able to take boats that are appearing compromised but not met the derelict criteria. They will be allowed to start the contact at that time and not completely the derelict. So the message has been heard at the state level. It is working its way through. I will get the actual Senate bill number because I had it all run off and left it at the house, but I will get it to Mr. Casella tomorrow and have him send it out to everybody or somebody, and so that we can all call in. You can call in and say, push it through, push it through, push it through. Right now, it doesn't have much opposition. We're not the only ones having the same problem. But this has been a stumbling block for FWC. They had to wait till the derelict criteria was placed before they could do anything. This bill will say if it appears compromised, if the windows are broken out, if something's broken on the boat or whatever and it's left there, then they can start the contact at that particular time. So this gives more meat to their authority. And I think it would benefit us greatly. So I will put that to Mr. Casella in the morning.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Trammell. And lastly, I really appreciate the vote of confidence and putting me here in this position for 4 weeks, or 4 meetings, actually. It is an honor to serve this great city. But even more so for me personally, it is a privilege. And I just am glad that I'm here for a short time and hope I serve all of you and the citizens well. We are going to take a short, quick 5-minute break and then reconvene here shortly. Thank you. seats.
Hey, did you notice the governor did not show up for the new airline they got this? Because he probably figures it's not gonna last any longer than video.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get started. So if I could ask you to please find your seats. Council members? Good. Okay, next item on the agenda is staff reports and recommendation. City Attorney? Do you
I have
any?
no items, Mayor. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. City Land Use Attorney?
Nothing here either, thank you.
Okay. Moving right along. Okay, item number 18, legal opinion on easement-related issues pertaining to Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park and Plaza. Mr. Casella, do you want to introduce the?
Yeah, thank you. I believe back in December, the City Council made a motion to authorize us to retain a real estate attorney to evaluate the interest, if any, that BI Inc. had in the Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park. And with that, the City Council authorized the hiring of Joe Boyd. He's here tonight. We distributed his legal opinion and conclusions to you Friday evening. He's here to present those to you, and he can respond to any questions you have. And at the conclusion of it, in addition, you had authorized us to work with the state of Florida relating to the proposed offer of a property exchange. We have had a conference call with the state of Florida relating to the proposal by BI Inc. to exchange the boardwalk easement for a portion of the property in the middle. They had asked for, the state asked for a copy of Scott Shirley's and his partner's legal opinion, asked for a sketch of the proposed exchange, and asked for Mr. Boyd's opinion when it was ready. So we're in the process of sending that over, and then we'll have an additional caucus with them relating to the proposed exchange. But with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Boyd to come up and present his report and his conclusions to you.
Mr. Boyd, if you just push that button on there, that would be the speaker. There you go, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you. I haven't heard the word servitude used so much time since I think the last year of law school, and whenever you get a bunch of real estate lawyers sitting around a bar trying to figure out who's going to pick up the bill. Let me try to get directly to the point. Our opinion is the easy part. What you all have to do going forward is the hard part. Let me tell you who we are. I'm Joe Boyd. I'm with the law firm of Boyd Durant. We practice statewide. We're, for lack of a better phrase, we're a real estate boutique. I've been a real estate attorney for 41 years. I have been board certified 25 years in real estate. I have served twice on the Real Estate Certification Committee for the state of Florida. There's 300 real estate attorneys out of 100,000 in Florida. I'm proud to be one of those attorneys. I was lead counsel in 1988 in the largest purchase in the state of Florida. It was the $264 million tri-rail in Miami. We dealt with a lot of easements and a lot of other stuff we dealt with. But those are matters of the past. Today is the issue what you all have. I've not worked with Mr. Casella in the past. When he reached out to us, the statement to me was, give us your best objective opinion, looking at the facts and the law, that you would give to your client. And that's what we've tried to do. We provided a January 15th opinion. You should have that in front of you. I hope you've read it. I'm going to try to go through the points as easy as we can and try to make this as not real estate law 101. The essence is that we wrote this not with the intent of writing it like a brief. If we did, I've got the notebook with all the stuff that nobody really wants to read, and there's much more. Our conclusions are that the claimant, and that's what we always refer to somebody when you have adverse properties. You have your neighbor, whoever's there, and we call it claimant. So whether it's BI or whoever you're referring to, it's claimant. That's who's in our opinion is defined as such. We've concluded that the claimant has no rights over, under, or through the city park property. We also concluded that there was an agreement passed by this commission and the city with the claimant in 2008, in which there was an arrangement that has been partially performed. The city has performed it, the claimant has not, because later, apparently in 2009, there was a conflict, an ethical conflict that prohibited that. That's in the materials that you have. But that, in essence, would disclaim any interest on the property. That's the park property that is an interest that we don't think ever existed. And I'll go through that very briefly. If I go too fast, just stop me. But if you have the opinion, that's what I'm going to reference it to, because it's probably the easiest way to deal with it. Starting at page 3, what we looked at was some of the points put forth by the claimant before the city commission. Down at page 3, item 2, the claimant has never drained the title. Those of you that have been in real estate a while, remember we used to call it the chain of title, but how you got to the property. So all of you that have a home, somebody owned it before you, and before you, you can look and see where the deed is and exactly what property was conveyed. There is no derangement of title that's been done. The second is that there's reference to a 1967 deed and having an easement that vests no interest whatsoever in the claimant. It has defects and it's only 8 feet. We talk about that further in the opinion. The claimant talks about a road, but does not go into any kind of record that we've seen as to how that road got to the claimant. So it's not just there's never, later we say, there's never a public dedication. So if there were rights, there's no way it ever gets to the claimant. When you look down, we'll go down to number 5, the claimant's deeds to Highway 98 BI property and waterfront BI property make no reference to the easement that's on the city property. If you were buying where your house is and your driveway was on your neighbor's property, you would get your deed to Lot 1, Block B, and you would also get a deed, a non-exclusive easement on the west 10 feet or 12 feet of your neighbor's property. The deeds to the claimant have no such external rights that come with it. The idea of what right does the claimant have, there's this concept in law called license. And you see us referenced in the opinion that tried to give it a pretty straightforward example. You all talked here tonight, I believe, about easements. Some people talk about licenses. An example we best give you is your power company has an easement across the back of your property. It's in perpetuity. It's a specific use. It's identifiable. Statute of fraud says how you do it with witnesses, etc. You like your neighbor, so you let your neighbor park their car or their camper on the edge of your property. That is a personal right that you grant them that does not create a right in real estate. It creates a possessive use right with them that's revocable. It's not insurable by title insurance. It doesn't get conveyed further. So what rights or what benefits that the claimant has can best be determined as a license. If anything, they're definitely not an easement. Down under 7 is probably what's been talked about and what we've heard, and it's a pretty common discussion. It's called a prescriptive easement. The prescriptive easements are 4 elements. We quote them in here as what they are. That's not rocket science. It's got to be a definite period of time. It's got to be 20 years. It's got to be uninterrupted. But one of the keys to prescriptive easement is adversity. If somebody walks across your backyard for 22 years and you don't do anything, they don't get rights. But if you go up there and say, don't do it, and they keep doing it for 20 years, then they are in place to get a prescriptive easement. It has to have adversity. The information we understand is that the claimant has paid the previous owner, that there is no evidence of what the adversity would be, and even then, it wouldn't be a car size. It would be some smaller, because apparently it was an 8-foot that was alluded to at one time. But we don't believe there's a prescriptive easement because there's no adversity, which is a critical element. And a good example of this, and you may have it here locally in the city of Hialeah. Long ago, they got the property owners to sit back their properties an extra 10 feet so they'd have an extra large walkway or sidewalk. Every year, every few years, the owners would go out and block off their 10 feet to make sure the 20-year window didn't run. So that's the type of thing It has to be adverse, and if you don't make it adverse, a component, and you see the case law, is not in there. We don't find any evidence of adversity. The phrase historical and customary use, that phrase doesn't exist in the law with regard to vesting real property rights. It may have other rights, but doesn't have real property rights, and it doesn't create property rights with your property. The 1967 deed, which was alluded to, is we refer to in our opinion as Melvin 1 and Melvin 2. I think it was Pete Melvin owned, and then his son, they conveyed some property. There was an 8-foot easement that went back that's alluded to. Two things that are defective in that. That easement never makes it to the claimant. That was personal to the Melvin family. That easement also was never dedicated to the public. I can assure you that if somebody fell and got hurt on that, I'm quite sure that the claimant here would not be trying to say that they had control of that, where they would be getting sued like the city would. But that 8-foot easement has a problem. The second part is this. If you give me an easement across your property, a real easement, honest, witnessed, deeded, recorded, and then one day I own your property, the easement goes away. I don't want to drag this out, but the concept of an easement is a servient estate. You all were talking about the servitude earlier. The servient estate is the dirt to the center of the earth. That's what is owned. The dominant interest is the right to go over it. Well, when you have both of those together, they merge, and the easement goes away. Ms. Melvin deeded this property to the Trust for Public Lands, who deeded it to you. That deed, any easement for 8 feet, if it still existed, would have merged by that period of time. We're down to a question about a DOT curb cut. DOT curb cuts create in and of themselves. What number? I'm sorry, it's on page 4. It's item 11. DOT curb cut does not create real property easement rights in and of itself. I'm not sure if we can get to exhibits. Can we get to? Would be, if you can look at your exhibit E all the way at the back. I'm going to bring you back to the front of it, but I want to show you that this may be helpful. Exhibit D. This is, okay. Anybody? Page 160. Now, Exhibit D should have in the top right-hand corner the letter D. D as in dog. If you look at the boxed in area, when you bought your house, your seller signed a seller's affidavit. We call it an owner's affidavit, a seller's affidavit, but those of you that have ever been in construction know that a contractor or people providing services to your property have 90 days to file a lien. If they have done services and they have been paid, in order to get your title insurance to cover what's called the gap, you have to have a seller's affidavit. Those seller's affidavits have gone on. They have other things added over the years. One of the things the seller's affidavit, this one didn't need, is something called FERPTA. It's if you're selling to somebody who's a foreign taxpayer, what you have to do to comply that you've taken the withholding. But interesting, this is by Ms. Melvin when she sold this property to Trust for Public Lands as a conduit to you for, I believe, for $4.6 million or something to that effect. She signed an affidavit swearing that nobody had any interest in the property except what's on Exhibit A. 2 pages later, it's some of the boats you all been talking about. It's a rental home, a couple others. Nowhere is the claimant identified as having any rights in the affidavit that she signed here. While we're on those exhibits, let me take you a little bit farther, and if you go to Exhibit G, G as in good. We make reference at the beginning about there was an agreement between the city and the claimant for certain things to be done. This is on Exhibit G.
Is it under certificate of completion or what's
No,
the
it says
title
a
on it?
conditional quitclaim of access way
Okay, hold on 1 second.
in the title, conditional quitclaim of access way. Should
Mr.
look like that. That helps.
I do not see that in our packet. Is
That's it right there. We draw your attention to this because this is a document that was prepared by counsel, who's a great attorney, prepared this on, apparently in conjunction with the claimant, and memorializes what is the deal, apparently, that was cut with the city in 2008. This talks about what apparently you all had agreed to in return for the claimant being able to move forward with the facility that the claimant was trying to prepare. And it talks about temporary being able to use your property. It also has a covenant to disclaim any interest that the claimant has in your property, and that the claimant, in return, would be able to build a different access way on the claimant's property. I think it's 10 or 12 feet. And that what you do, it says legal, but the actual is, it would be a permitted non-conforming use. Your counsel would have a better idea. But in 2009, the deal was still on, apparently with the city, and the city opened, and the city's and the claimant's own attorney prepared this document. However, there came an issue that the claimant couldn't sign because the claimant was a member of this commission. And because of a letter that you have, I think it was in June of 2008, claimant could not execute that document until claimant was no longer a member of this council, which my information is that claimant has not been a member of this council for several years. But the deal, even after the conflict issue came up, was still proceeding based on what appears to be this transaction. Now, that's the highlights of the points that we raised. We're not here to advocate what position you took. I was asked to review objectively what the law is, and we've done that. What you decide to do is up to you. Let's talk about procedure. We talk about consequences and ramifications. By the way, I've never seen your attorney's opinion that Scott did. I've specifically asked not to see it. This was my thing to do my research. I didn't want it, to this day I haven't seen it. Everybody talks about saying, I'll get an injunction. We talk in here, getting an injunction and trying to get an injunction is two different things. Might get an injunction if somebody started to do something. We always hear about it. But the normal course is, we quote the cases, you don't just go down and get an injunction. You have to show irreparable harm, which means it can't be compensated by money. This is more like somebody's taken the last parrot off the island or something. This can't be compensated by money. It has to be in the public interest. There has to be a high probability of being able to prevail in trial. And in most cases, a bond for all foreseeable damages has to be posted. So if an injunction is sought by the claimant, by whatever action you take, it might be granted, but the consequences might be that these other protections. It's just not a matter of what happens. The second is that if someone says that they have an interest in your property, and depending what their motives are, and we have no reason to suspect there's any bad motives in this thing, but slander of title, if I said that I owned your house and it messed up you being able to add on your house, or messed up you being able to sell your house, slander of title is a recognized cause of action under Florida law, and we mentioned that. Again, it's fact specific, and there's no suggestion that anybody's doing otherwise. In order to get a crystallization, though, you're going to have to retake possession. This is what would happen if your next door neighbor was going across your property. You're going to have to either go block it off, fence it off, or do something to stop what you believe to be the improper use of your property. That's why we conclude that if you're going to do that, and it's not going to be worked out in some voluntary, reasonable way, which I understand that both sides have tried to do, but unsuccessfully, you're going to have to do something to say, this is my land, and you can't get on it. And then somebody who wants to get on it is going to have to either break in, which is, depending what it is, as we mentioned, is either misdemeanor or felony. I'm sure the parties here are not going to do it. But that's what happens if somebody comes on your property. You don't sit back and handhold, you call the police. You know, that's it. Again, we don't think that's the issue here, but they sue to remove the interference of their property or their claim, and a court will decide if you get an injunction. Now, even if I have an easement across your property, that doesn't mean I get to go across your property all the time. A case in 2010 we cited where it even said it's free and open access or something to that effect. You still have the right to put a gate on that easement and put a keypad that nobody can get it so long as you make the number for the keypad available, okay? So it's not a matter of it's open and you can go any place. You can still control access. And this is relevant in the park plans that you have going forward, depending what your ideas of use were. And we're not part of that. But giving an easement or granting doesn't just mean what people think it does. All of these have legal implications. Lawsuits are expensive. The outcome is not always known, and its time is an issue. This dispute you have, if it can be resolved, will probably take time to get resolved. We think in the end, and we say in our opinion, we think you're an overwhelming favorite to prevail on your position that you have fee simple title to that property. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyd. Does council have any questions for Mr. Boyd? Mr. Foreman?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to initiate construction of Heritage Park, including fencing of the property.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Braden. Okay, we're going to take discussion, but I also think it's fair that we need to hear from the speakers, Ms. Minshew and Mr. Destin. So we have a motion and a second. If any council members had any questions, would you like to defer and allow Mr. Destin and Ms. Minshew to speak, or do you want to go ahead and ask the questions now? Okay, it's up to you guys, whoever would like to go first, or both.
Thank you for this opportunity. Mayor, it's good to see you sitting in that seat again.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go first because Ms. Minshew is being paid to straighten out whatever mess I make. If I may, Mayor, I'd like to just address the design of the park because staff alluded that the design was what made it necessary to close and remove the road. I'd like to point out that the plan as it stands now calls for the demolition and removal of approximately 17 feet of the protective bluff along the north shore of the Destin Harbor. To my knowledge, this is the historical first. Even my favorite developers to the north, to the west and south, east of this parcel have never attempted to remove those protective bluffs. This will be a first time. And when you move that protective bluff, you will kill heritage oak trees that are on the property line between BI's property and the city's property. Common sense tells us that those roots extend underground many feet over onto the city's property. If we take that bluff down 17 feet, you're going to cut probably half of those tree roots away, and those trees will die. It's a very sad state of affairs in the city of Destin that we have lost all the heritage oaks that have been along the harbor. We lost one on the Fish and Fleet property. We lost one down at Emerald Grand. And is this the kind of precedent you want to set for the developers along the harbor? If the city would remove part of the bluff in that manner and kill heritage trees, how can we ever tell the development community that they shouldn't do that? To insinuate that BI reneged on an agreement from 2008 is very troublesome to us. The agreement was not legal. Upon advice of Mr. Miller, the city council attorney, we could not sign that agreement. To simply say that we could now go forward with that agreement because it's been the advantages told by the agreement has been told for 2 years does not make sense. If an elected official would be able to do that, you would render the ethics prohibition against taking things of value from an elected official's agency meaningless. An elected official could simply put off the benefit till he or she was out of office for 2 years. So that agreement was not illegal for us to enter into now. It would not be illegal for us to enter into that agreement at any time in the future. In addition, the agreement that we had been talking about gave us permission to build a road on the western side of the property. As we learned later, when we were negotiating on that agreement, we found that we only had 10 feet on that side, and the code would not allow us to build that road at all. So the city would have to had agreed to give us permission to build a road that would not meet the code. As you may not know, the BI property is divided into 2 distinct parcels with different parcel IDs in the property appraiser's office and leased to different corporate entities. Luther's Pontoons on the water side and Dewey's Harborside Restaurant on the road side on Harbor Boulevard. Neither BI nor Dewey's Harborside had the ability to grant easements on the land leased by Luther's Pontoons as a condition to receive building permits to remodel the restaurant on the highway parcel. And yet we did everything we could to accommodate the city. We demolished the old Blue Room restaurant, which some of you have been long enough to know was on the front parcel, instead of using it as a restaurant. We obtained our own curb cut to allow access into that parking lot, even though the DOP was opposed because they said that would be 2 curb cuts that were touching each other. We brought our new parking lot up to the city's standards on required parking spaces. And I invite any of you council members to look down behind Dewey, Destin, and Harborside, and you will find our section of the city's Harbor Walk, built to the city's specifications and in the area requested to by the city so that it would align with the other portions of the Harbor Walk. The city estimate was it would cost $160,000 to construct that section of the Harbor Walk. BI paid for the construction out of our own funds. The only way to bring the city's Harbor Walk to completion and not violate the law was to self-fund the portion of our property, which we did. To now be accused of reneging on our obligation is our reward for spending that money to do the right thing. That's hard. That's a little hard for us to take at BI. And yet, we continue to attempt to cooperate with the city. We've agreed to move the road in question as close to our buildings as possible on the portion of the road that runs from the south end of Dewey's parking lot down to Luther's Pontoons, that portion of the BI property by the harbor. We've agreed to enter into negotiations necessary in 2016, which would be legal, to give an easement for the portion of the Harbor Walk located on our property on the water side. We have also spoken to several council members about taking our eastern dock and allowing, if the city will go in partnership with us, turning that into a public dock on the east side so the city will have a water connection to the Harbor Walk. That would complement the city's multimodal transportation mode and for the first time give the city its own dock on the harbor. We continue to try to go forward to fix this problem in a manner that will be beneficial to both the city and our renters at Luther's Pontoon rental down on the harbor. If you have any other questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Destin.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ms.
Ms. Minshew.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Minshew. My office is in Pensacola, and I'm proud to represent Mr. Destin and his company, BI Inc. and Dewey Destin Harborside LLC. I've been working with Mr. Destin since 2009 when this issue first came up. And so over the last 7 years, we've met with city attorneys, we've met with the city staff many times. We've always tried to come up with creative ways to resolve the dispute. Every time we leave those meetings with a proposal, we just don't hear back about what's going to happen. And then months go by, and then there's another meeting set, and we try again. Mr. Destin has done everything possible to try to resolve this. To come tonight with an opinion that was issued Friday night, to say that we somehow reneged on an agreement is upsetting to me and to Mr. Destin. I prepared the documents, and I sent them to the city hoping that it would work out somehow. Mr. Miller said, we can't even discuss these kind of things. You need to get those documents out of the building. This is an ethical violation. So now, 7 years later, supposedly we've reneged on an agreement. Some of the things about the opinion that I want to bring up are just, I don't want to go into it in great detail. We're not here in front of a judge. But I do need for each of you to understand that anything that's been going on 7 years, it's not clear cut. And to suggest in a legal opinion written over the last few weeks that it is clear cut and there's no other side is just not a recognition that whenever there's two lawyers, there's at least 2 or 3 opinions. If counsel is so adamant that there is no way that you can lose on this case, then maybe he should guarantee it. And if he loses, then maybe he should pay for it. My suggestion is that there are 2 sides to every question. Some of the inherent defects in that opinion that cause it to have no validity are, one, it doesn't recognize that there's 2 parcels. There's a parcel on the road side and there's a parcel on the water side. The water side parcel only provided access through this driveway. So taking the aggressive move that you've made by motion tonight, you're shutting down the harbor. If you put up that fence, you're going to close a business that's been operating in the city of Destin for many years without any problems, a good business, a local business. So you're going to take an aggressive act and shut them down. This is exactly the kind of action that does promote injunction. We've talked many times about the city going ahead and taking it to court and having a declaratory action, have the judge decide. The city's never taken that kind of action to do it in a friendly way, not to close a man's business. Another inherent defect in this opinion is that it ignores the fact that the DOT opened and approved that curb cut in the 60s or earlier. The public has been using that driveway, that roadway, to provide access to the water for many, many years, well in excess of the 20 years required for adverse possession. Another inherent problem with this opinion is that it assumes that because the easement is 8 feet in width, that it was only used for pedestrians. I would suggest that's a lack of understanding about what goes on in Destin. I litigated for years the case of the boathouse and the access ways around the boathouse property. It's a very similar roadway that goes down to that property. These roadways, as you all know, used by fishermen, they were all narrow. Another inherent problem is a misunderstanding of this 1967 deed. The 1967 deed recognizes a public ingress and egress easement over the 8 foot that we're talking about. It says it right in the deed. All you have to do is look at it. It's in your packet. After recognizing that public access easement in the deed, the Melvins then reserved a private easement over that same area. So you say, well, why would we do that? I think the Melvins and their attorney were pretty smart. They knew that the city might one day abandon that public easement, and they wanted to retain a right privately. But this deed recognizes it and is in the record that there is a public ingress and egress easement over the same driveway. And we all know it. You've all driven on it. There's 200 to 300 cars a day that use it. The public has been using it now for at least 50 years. So with those inherent problems in this opinion, I point that out to you so that you understand that this is not some kind of slam dunk with a judge. In my opinion, and I've been not quite as many years as Mr. Boyd, 31 years being a real estate attorney. Mr. Boyd and I have one connection. My father was the Florida Association of Realtors president back when he represented the board. So I have a lot of real estate in my blood too. And my research tells me that there are at least 6 different reasons that BI and Dewey Destin Harborside has a right to use that road. There are 2 statutory ways of necessity arguments under Florida Statute 704. There's a very recent first DCA case that promotes use of that statutory way of necessity to the lower parcel, especially since there's no other way for that marina to get open. There's also an argument for a prescriptive easement, a private way. There's a 1995 case that supports that. You have to prove actual, continuous, and uninterrupted use for 20 years. We easily meet the 20-year standard. We also can prove a prescriptive easement by the public. Whenever you're talking about public ways to water in Florida, anybody that does real estate law knows that is not an easy question. That is not going to happen in a summary judgment motion or some fast manner in any courtroom. That's going to take years to litigate. In this case, we have it in the deed that the owner recognized that this was a public easement. We know that fishermen have used that access way for many years. My research and my experience in litigating these kind of matters, I had another case in federal court in Fort Walton on the same kind of thing, a shell road that went to the water. When the public has used that way for more than 20 years, and it is known to the owner, I'm quoting from the Supreme Court, visible so that the knowledge of adverse can be imputed to the owner, it's also adverse. So the Melvins knowing that that's being used and putting it in their deed is sufficient. The other thing that I think is interesting that's left out of that memo is the public's customary use for access to the waterfront. This was established in a Florida Supreme Court case in 1974, City of Daytona. Mr. Boyd's father wrote a dissenting opinion to, wherein he felt like the public had an even greater right to the access to the water than even the Supreme Court granted in that case. And in that case it says that since the beach has served as a thoroughfare for fishermen and bathers and a place of recreation for the public, the interest of the right to the public is protected. And since that general area has customarily been put to public use, it must be protected. And that was recently, in my life recently, 2007, reaffirmed by the courts. So at least 6 different arguments that are going to have to be litigated over this. What we would suggest and what we have been trying to do for 7 years is let's make a deal. Let's have an actual agreement where we can provide some kind of access to the marina. What you probably also don't know is this restaurant was approved and constructed with its access to the emergency fire protection on this right-of-way. So there's a big sign right there at the right-of-way, halfway down the property, which is where the fire department must go if there's a problem at the restaurant. Now, if it's not a right-of-way, then why did the city approve it with that being the location? So if you put up the fence, which is the current motion, and you shut it down, there's not going to be a way for the firemen to get there in case there's a problem at the restaurant. There's not going to be a way for the emergency access to get down to the marina. Why would you do that? Mr. Destin, as you know, has always worked with the city. You see my name on these documents. I've prepared so many possible compromises we're ready to do that again. We'll meet with the staff. If you want to do a declaration action to the judge, we'd go there with you. But don't close down a man's business when you don't know the end result. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minshew. If you'd probably remain close by, just in case any of the council members have any questions. Ms. Ramswell?
I actually have a question for Mr. Boyd, although Ms. Minshew could probably answer it as well. You had referred to the easement being listed on, I guess, one deed. Is that correct?
There is an 8-foot easement in the Melvin 1 to Melvin 2 deed that has an 8-foot reference. That's the only express easement we see anyplace.
Oh, okay, so it disappeared, or they took it out, or?
That part, the Melvins never alienated it. They didn't give it to the public. There was no acceptance by this commission as a dedication. It's a Melvin to Melvin transaction. Melvin 1 took whatever rights they had to their grave, except the survivor of Melvin 1 deeded to Melvin 2. When Melvin 2 and one of them died, the survivor of that would have had all of the serving of the estate and the dominant estate. So whatever's in that deed would have been merged, except for if there was a public dedication, and there's no evidence of such, either in the deed or any place else.
Okay.
And that's the 8-foot that was talked about, 1967.
I guess I'm just curious then, because I went back and I pulled all the deeds associated with the parcels, and it actually shows it also in 82, and then it also shows subject to existing easements on 97 and 06 agreements.
Subject to existing easements is different from an express easement.
Right, well, it's expressed in 1982.
And the express easement would not have made itself to the city property at the time Mrs. Melvin conveyed it, because it would have been wiped out by merger.
Okay, so obviously it didn't just appear in 67, it's in other
It created, it arose in 67. I didn't say it disappeared, it created in 67. It merged no later than when you got the deed, the city deed, because of merger, no later than that. But that's when it created. It's the 67 deed that made it, and it's between the Melvins.
Okay. The other question I had was, you had mentioned that there's no title to easement on the BI property. Is that commonplace, that an easement on someone else's land would actually appear on other people's property deeds?
Oh, absolutely, positively. If I'm buying 40 acres off of Highway 20, and I'm back from the road, and your land is between me and the road, I'm going to get a fee simple absolute insurable title on my 40 acres and a title insurance policy on that easement that will insure that easement to make sure somebody can't cut that off, to make sure the people that gave me that easement. But absolutely, it's an easement that's pertinent. You identify it, it's recorded. Anybody that then buys that other property, they know that easement is there. If this was an easement, an express easement, and it existed, then when the city acquired the property, it would have said, subject to that easement of such and such, and BI, which, by the way, we do reference, it's two different parcels, in our opinion. BI owns both parcels. You can't landlock yourself. If I own the property back here, and I own the property up to the road, I can't say I'm landlocked, because I control all of it. So, but if you're let's assume you're not B1 back over here, you're buying your XYZ on the waterfront, you either want to get an easement across the property right in front of you, or you want an easement over on the Melvin and now the city property. But you can't landlock yourself and then say I'm landlocked when you own all the property.
So I guess I'm confused. If that was listed as a public easement for ingress and egress, why would it just be on his property? It's public, so everyone had a right, so I wouldn't expect to see it on anyone else's.
To have a deed, you have to have a grantor and a grantee. When you convey interest in real estate, you can't convey it to the cloud. You have to convey it to the city of Destin. You have to convey it to Okaloosa County, who has to accept it. You can't just, if you do a public dedication, you have to do a public dedication, but that has certain elements that are statutory, none of which are met here. Just as an aside, there was some talk about joining the city in declaratory action. The claimant here, since 2007 or 8, could have filed a Chapter 86 declaratory judgment and a quiet title action, and we wouldn't be here right now. If the claimant didn't think this was a proper, that the title was in doubt, that they had this easement, the claimant could have come forward in circuit court in Okaloosa County years ago and said, this isn't fair, this is my property, here's the rights, Ms. Melvin wasn't correct in her affidavit, and here's what it is. Or the claimant could go to his title insurance, its title insurance, when it bought B1, the property on the waterfront, and make a claim for loss of access. And we mentioned that in our opinion. And that is what you do. And yes, if your property is here and you don't have access, you want to somebody else's property, you do buy title insurance for that. There is none that we know of in this case.
You made reference to a quitclaim deed. Can you explain that, the circumstances?
I don't know what, I know what a quitclaim deed is, but I don't know what reference I made.
Well, I was just curious and how this fits into everything, because my understanding of a quitclaim deed is that is something that you issue to someone that has an ownership interest in a particular piece of property.
A quitclaim deed that's used in Florida is generally somebody who has either no interest or has questionable interest in somebody else's property. And you have three types of deeds in Florida. You have general warranty deeds, where like what you have for your house. I own my house, I'm going to deed it to you, and I warrant that I own it, and everybody ahead of me owned it when I deeded it to you. A statutory, special warranty deed is like what happens if you ever inherit property. The personal representative doesn't warrant all the title from the back, they only warrant the title since they had. That's a special warranty deed. I'll warrant only since I had. And the last one is a quitclaim deed, Q-U-I-T, claim deed. It says, I quit whatever interest I might have or not have, I give that. So that would be the only purpose of what a quitclaim deed would be. And they don't have to have interest because they're not warranting they have interest. They're just saying they don't, if somebody thinks they have, they're quitting that, and they quitclaim that interest to whoever they want to.
Thank you, you've been very helpful.
Okay. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. First comment I have is that Mr. Destin talked about was that bluff. I wouldn't support anything as far as tearing that bluff down or killing the trees or doing anything to kill the trees. How much has the city paid Mr. Boyd for this so far?
I can tell you it's $15,000. It's an hourly rate, not to exceed $15,000. We've exceeded that, so our cap is at $15,000.
I got you. Thank you. I would think, I mean, if our title insurance says that there's no easement on this, then, I mean, we would go back to if we developed this property and it went to court, it seems like we'd fall back on title insurance and not continue to hire attorneys.
But the reason we're at this point, we are at a point now that, and Mr. Braden, you were not on the city council when this property was acquired, but we have basically a funding partner with us. The state of Florida funded approximately $2.3 million to assist us in this acquisition of this property. So anything we do with the property, we require their concurrence. So, and we're in that, when and the procedures do allow a proposed property exchange if there is a substantial public benefit, and basically that we would get more than we receive. So we're at a point now where we have, in addition to accepting that $2.3 million grant, we've got a $1,250,000 restore grant ready to build the park. And we expect that to be back from Treasury at any point. Now they've sent that in to Okaloosa County has. So we've got that to the to deal with. And I think what we need to figure out a way to get this off dead center so that we can move forward with construction of the park. I've not seen any plans that showed us going to kill any of the trees, on the, on VI Inc.'s property and/or the city's property. That's, were we going to shape the park in a particular direction? Yeah, but we were going to make sure that we protected those heritage trees from any damage. So, but that's what we're here for. This issue has been going since 2006 when the city acquired the property with the assistance of the state grant. We have provided the state Mr. Shirley's opinion that they attacked the issue from a little different angles, but basically concur with the same opinion independently that VI Inc. does not have an interest in Heritage Park. We have provided the offer that VI Inc. has made to the city to do the property exchange, and as I said earlier, we will be providing the Mr. Boyd's legal opinion as it relates to that, and would continue to have conversations with them as relates to a proposed exchange, but because that was pursuant to y'all's direction. But we're at a point where we really need to decide how we want to proceed with the construction of the park, or we'll lose the $1,250,000 grant. And that money will get reallocated. So we're at that crossroads here, and I think what building the fence, whether or not you file a deck action or whether or not you file for the injunction, eventually you'll be in front of a judge making a determination whether or not VI Inc. has an interest in this property.
Mr. Braden, did that, you good?
So the city's already spent $1.5 million on this property, is that what you're saying? And the grant put in another?
We put in 2.3 and the state put in 2.3. We bought property for total about 4.6, and that number may be, there was some adjustments because of some private purpose with some slips, but it was basically a 50-50 grant. So we've got $2.3 million, maybe a little more of city money plus design and so forth. So,
Well, obviously this thing's been going on for 7 years, and I mean, I think it's time to put it to bed, whatever we do, to end it somehow, some way. If there's an easement, then we need to get our stuff and get off of it and, move forward. But it's, if we haven't reached an agreement in 7 years, it's not going to. We need to move forward and put it to bed one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Braden. Mr. Marlar?
Thank you, Mayor. It amazes me that, and no offense to any lawyers in the room, but in Mr. Destin, in my younger days and our parents' days, handshakes meant more than a piece of paper in the way the land was done around here. It's the weird part of this whole thing is that the property was sold to the city with great intentions, and we wanted to do things with great intention to make it a nice park. But at the same time, it seems to me that we are going to put two people out of business at the same time, which is not where we want to go. For staff, do we have the concrete plans that, I've only seen conceptual drawings since I've been up here the last 4 years, but not any actual concrete plans yet.
It's my understanding, and David and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but the CRA board as well as the city council has endorsed the conceptual plans. We are brought 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the design of the park, awaiting this final decision, and then we would tell basically Tetra Tech to proceed and finish the park. If we get the green light, we could finish up the design within the next 2 or 3 months. Then we would then put it out to bid, which would become in sync with the restore money and hopefully award it in late June, early July for construction of the park. That's the schedule right now.
Okay. I'm really not ready to make a decision tonight, either way. I can't support the current motion on the floor simply because I think there's got to be a way to make a compromise. I mean, I'm not just looking at the land thing. I'm looking at the people involved. Mr. Destin has given to this city since we became a city. He's been served on almost every council here, and to do due diligence to him, to his family heritage, and my family heritage, and I also will have a question from Mr. Miller if we have to go this route, because I am very distantly related to just about everybody in town. And so I don't know whether I'm going to be able to to actually vote on this thing, but I can't support the current motion on the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marlar. Mr. Dixon?
I was going to offer a substitute motion, and the substitute motion would be that we give mediation one more try. I know we've been down the road. I know that from everything I'm hearing here tonight that it seems like to me that we're going to be in court with this thing if we go ahead with the motion that Mr. Foreman makes. I am in agreement. We do need to get the ball rolling. I am worried about if we are tied up in court, whether or not we lose that money that Mr. Casello was talking about just a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and offer a substitute motion that we go back or direct the city manager to go back into mediation one more time and see if we can work this out without everybody suing each other.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Marlar has a second motion. Okay, we are going to take the the substitute motion first. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Dixon, seconded by Mr. Marlar, to send this item to mediation. Any discussion on that? Let's call the vote. Or, Ms. Trammell, are you voting? Oh, okay. Ms. Trammell?
I'm in agreement with the mediation. I have a question about what Mr. Casella said earlier about, in looking at what has currently been proposed, related to our, for lack of a better term, I'll call them the partners in this, is it trust? And their requirement that they want any kind of an easement or something like this to be for the greater good of the public and not just necessarily, I need to know the parameters of that, I guess.
Basically, the rules of procedure for property exchange, and they do allow it. That basically we have to get more than we give. So that's one criteria. And the other criteria they asked us about was what overall was the public benefit from making this exchange. And candidly, I struggled with that answer because I said outside of, avoiding delays, we really were, for us, proceeding post haste with the park was something that we wanted to do. So we struggled with the public benefit portion of it. But basically, there's a very strict guidelines about, and again, the rules allow it, but you have to lay out for the state of Florida, because they use state funds to help pay for this, that, the public interests are being protected. So that's what they're looking for here in any exchange. But they do allow it. It is an allowable exchange as long as you meet their criteria. It first goes to staff, and then they go to their review board and so forth. So that's where we're at right now. We have initiated the conversations with them, but we're not at a point where we can say anything definitive. So,
are they in any of these negotiations? We do it and then we just report to them. Is that the way it works?
yeah, I mean this has been, and we've had 2 mediation sessions. I believe that's correct. Do we? Was it? We had 2 mediation sessions. In attempt to try to, and that's why, I had recommended that we mediate to try to resolve this issue, because, one, we've got 10 years of history here, and we do need to bring it to closure. So, but the mediations were an attempt to avoid where we're at today in an adversarial. Hopefully, we could work out something that was going to be acceptable to, the city, that I could recommend to you, as well as to BI Inc. So that's why we're here, trying to reach a settlement, a compromise. If we can come to a compromise, then we would present that to the state and hopefully convince the state to accept it. We could finish up the design of the park, continue to keep the, restore dollars in play. And that's really why we haven't been here before, because we never had the dollars to build the park. And now we've got the dollars to build the park. So that's, what we're trying to do.
Okay, Mr. Dixon, does your motion include the two premises that Mr. Casella was talking about are requirements for the state?
Well, I don't, repeat that, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Hamel.
This whole end down here is a little
The
handicapped
motion,
tonight.
was only for the city manager to enter into mediation.
Yeah, and try one more round. I'm just,
I'm sure
what
it'll
I'd like to
encompass
say that
everything.
we try it one more time before we go into court.
Would you put a time frame on it?
Yes, what's reasonable?
If Mr. Destin's agreeable and Mr. Bond's available, since he's already been educated on this, I would suggest 30 days.
I think that, Mayor, if I could make one comment, the
Certainly.
offer to Bill.
Can you identify yourself for the record, sir?
Dewey Destin. That would be acceptable to make one comment. In order to allay Mr. Casella's reservations about the public benefit, that's why we've made the offer to take the dock that's on our eastern boundary with the city in partnership to expand it out and to give half of it to the city for a public dock. I'm afraid this is the last chance that the city's going to have a dock on the harbor. I'm not sure that they can put one on the parcel that they bought, most likely not, but we will, we're willing to add that to sweeten the pot to try to make, make the deal better. Given the public access by boat to the harbor walk would be a big plus.
I just wanted to add for your motion purposes so we don't have to come back on this issue. If Mr. Bond isn't available for 30 days, can we make it so that it's subject to his availability? He's the mediator. Just in case, I don't want, because he's a very busy guy.
Are you good with that, Mr. Dixon?
I'm sorry, you said that.
I'm sorry.
You said he is not available for 30
Mr.
days?
Bond is a very busy lawyer and mediator. Sometimes he's not available for 30 days. So all I was saying was if you could make your motion to say, subject to the mediator's availability, because it may be longer than 30 days.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I can say that we just leave it open-ended, so
Something other.
And this the only mediator that can be used?
No, but he's
The
been the
reason-
mediator.
We've
twice.
educated him, he's been educated on all these facts, so.
All right, 60 days.
Well, I think, let's try 30 days. If we find that he's not available, I'll come back to you on your February 1st and let you know and ask for an extension.
30 days, okay.
Okay. Ms. Ramswell, I know you want to speak on this, and so does Mr. Braden, but I really want to clear the motion for mediation up. If we could take a motion on that and see how that goes, and then we can continue, if you don't mind. Okay, there is a motion on the floor by Mr. Dixon, seconded by Mr. Marler, for this direction for the city manager to enter into mediation with the parties, BI Inc., and to bring those back within a reasonable time frame, 30 days. Okay, I'm going to clear this real quick. And now, let's call for the vote on that motion. Mr. Wood, you're the only one I don't have yet. Oh, you're deciding, sorry, I don't mean to rush you. No, that's okay. I'm getting used to this
We said
machine.
30 days, correct?
Yes, sir.
Not 31.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Therefore, there's no reason for any further discussion on that item, so sorry. Okay, there you go. Okay, next item. Number 19, reimbursement of overpaid funds to FEMA for Hurricane Gustav 2008.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council, this item is the, back, I guess, in 2008, and I don't remember Hurricane Gustav, but apparently we had some damage. They reimbursed us for our expenses. And then in the first quarter in 2014, they sent us a final disbursement. And then that was about $20,000 or $25,000. And then we subsequently, they've now came back to us and said by mistake they had sent that to us, and it should have been either the county or the state money. So we would ask for authorization to reimburse that amount of money because.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to keep it down here, please? Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Casella.
It was made in error, so we'd ask for your authorization of that.
Okay, council members? Questions, comments, motions?
Are we giving them money back, or are we getting money? I can't understand what he's.
We're giving them the money that they improperly
Okay.
gave us.
Dang.
Okay, Ms. Trammell?
I'll be glad to make the recommended motion, but I have a comment at the end.
Okay.
I move that the Destin City Council authorize the city manager to refund the state of Florida's Division of Emergency Management overpayment of funds to the city in the amount of $18,892.57 from the city reserves.
Okay, Mr. Wood?
And I'd like to,
Yeah, follow up.
we need a second. We need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Now I'll
Mr.
make a
Wood?
comment.
Okay, now.
I just want, I'm sure the city manager is aware, I want council to be aware that this is happening throughout the state. This is happening all over the place. FEMA is asking, they're calling it clawback. They're taking monies back. And it's very controversial because some very big hurricanes in some other states, they decided they did the same, they gave money inappropriately according to some rule or reg. But they're not asking for that back because the amount was too big. So some people in South Florida are having to pay back millions. I feel lucky that we're only having to pay back $18,000. But I think we need to look at any future request very carefully and come down with this because I know that there's a movement in South Florida to prevent this clawback if possible. So I'm just requesting y'all be on top of this, and maybe we might need to join into that motion, I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Trammell. Mr. Wood, did you have a comment, or yours was just to second the motion?
Actually, I do have a comment now. I guess, I've been on the council 8 years. This is the first I've heard of this. So this has been going on for we just haven't executed, but it's been going on for a while, hasn't it? Maybe I'm asking the wrong question here.
Now, in 2008, the storm came through.
Right.
They reimbursed us the bulk of our expenses, and then in the first quarter of 2014, sent us a second check to close it out. So I don't sense this as being a clawback.
So that was a discrepancy with the 2014 check we got.
Yeah, that was, instead of going to the state or federal, they sent it to us, and that's what we're doing, just